Welcome back to The Explainer, everyone. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here today because we're jumping straight into something that literally shifts how we understand the whole digital world. If you've spent any time at all navigating the Web3 space, you've probably been sold a very specific kind of pervasive myth. It's this idea that because a blockchain is completely transparent, it's just automatically easy to understand. Well, today we're going to completely shatter that myth by looking at the actual architecture of on-chain intelligence. Let's explore why total visibility doesn't equal total clarity and what we actually need to make sense of it all.
Okay, let's dive into this. The core idea here, that open systems do not automatically create understanding, is the absolute foundation of everything we're covering today. Look, we've spent years celebrating the fact that DeFi is built on open ledgers, right? We kind of thought sheer transparency was the magic bullet. We thought that if everyone could just see the ledger, boom, all the mystery would vanish. But as the source material makes super clear, DeFi already proves that simply cracking open the system doesn't magically bestow actual comprehension upon the users looking at it.
And that brings us right to Section 1, the illusion of transparency and the absolute limits of raw data.
Now, if you've ever tried to track a transaction or figure out what a smart contract is actually doing, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You open up an Explorer and bam, you're instantly hit with this overwhelming, chaotic wall of numbers and letters. It's like an ocean of information, but without a map, you're just drowning in it. I mean, thousands of transactions are firing off every single second. Just think about the sheer volume out there. The code is completely visible. Public transactions, exposed wallet activity for anyone in the world to look at 24/7. It's a relentless, endless stream. But here's the wild part. Even with all of this extreme exposure, even with every single door blown wide open, everyday users are still left completely in the dark about what's actually happening.
Let's move to Section 2 and see how this builds into the DeFi trust gap and all those big, unanswered questions. Because all that raw data we just talked about, it hasn't done a single thing to eliminate the very real, very human anxiety that users face. Despite having total access to the ledger, people are still desperately trying to figure out the exact same things they always have. Let's think about the questions that literally keep users up at night. Question number 1, can this protocol actually be trusted? I mean, it doesn't matter if you can see every single line of code if you can't read the language. People are staring at open data and they're still terrified of losing their assets.
Or what about question number 2? Has this team built successfully before? Sure, the transactions are public, but who's actually behind them? Transparency doesn't hand you a resume. It just gives you a string of cryptographic hashes.
And then there's the ultimate question. Where does the risk actually sit? This is the real breaking point. If a system is perfectly transparent, why is the risk still invisible? Why are users still paralyzed by the unknown?
And this brilliantly illustrates the core problem we're facing. There's a massive, fundamental difference between seeing information and actually understanding information. Staring at an open ledger is honestly like staring at a dictionary in a language you don't speak. Yeah, the information is right there in front of your eyes. You can see every single letter on the page, but you don't understand a word of it. The source material draws a really hard line here. Visibility is just the baseline, but comprehension, well, that's an entirely different mountain to climb.
All right, welcome to Section 3, Scaling Intelligence with Context, the missing link.
So how do we actually climb that mountain? How do we take a collective breath, step back from that chaotic fire hose of raw data, and introduce a structural solution? I want to share a quote from the source with you for a second. Raw transparency scales data. Context scales intelligence. Wow. That right there, that's the whole paradigm shift. For the last decade, we've been completely obsessed with scaling data. We built massive systems just to handle more and more visible transactions. But scaling data just gives you a bigger pile of puzzle pieces. It's the context, the picture on the front of the box, that actually scales intelligence and lets you put it all together.
So the crucial point is, without that context, what do we actually have? Well, the source defines it perfectly. We have disconnected signals. Without context, on-chain activity is just this endless, exhausting stream of raw, uninterpretable data. It's literally just beeps and boops on a screen. It has no shape, no story, and zero utility for someone just trying to make a safe, informed decision. To bridge this massive gap, the source points to a really pioneering methodology used by Codatta.io. They approach this problem mechanically by turning mere visibility into something interpretable. How? Through 3 distinct pillars. First, metadata attached to activity. So we aren't just seeing a transaction, we're seeing what the transaction represents. Second, reputation attached to participants. We finally move beyond anonymous wallet addresses and start seeing the history and reliability of the actors involved. And third, verified context attached to signals. That raw data is finally given a verified layer of meaning.
Which brings us to our final section. Meaning makes information useful. The ultimate goal.
Now, what's really interesting here is the philosophical shift in how we actually build systems for human beings to use. It's all about taking that structure we just talked about and applying it directly to your peace of mind. Consider the contrast in objectives here. The goal is no longer about helping people see more. We've totally maxed out seeing. We can see everything. The true goal, the absolutely necessary evolution of Web3, is helping people understand more. It's about shifting the burden of interpretation away from the overwhelmed user and building it right into the architecture of the data itself.
Because at the end of the day, as our source material so perfectly states, information only becomes useful when it starts carrying meaning. That is your key takeaway from this explainer today. If you want to safely navigate this space, you just can't rely on raw transparency alone. You need metadata, you need reputation, you need verified context, you need systems that actually respect your time and your safety by providing real meaning, not just a massive data dump.
So, as we wrap up today's explainer, I really want to leave you with this final provocative thought to chew on. We have all the data in the world right at our fingertips, literally all of it. But without context, without structure, do we actually know what any of it means? Keep that in mind the next time you're staring at a ledger. Seek context, demand meaning, and never settle for just seeing the information. Thanks for joining me on the explainer today, and keep learning.